mean, she was up for all sorts of like butt plugs and things like that, but you can't say that to anybody nowadays because it's seen as, oh no, no, that's your personal stuff. You don't share it. But a lot of girls are into that, being spat on, dominated, spanked, choked,
They really
all
are.
these
They
sorts of
really are.
things.
So how do you? Okay, so how do you kind of bring that out of a woman, right? It's I mean, there's obviously a few different ways to do it, but I think that it's always going to be a better situation if you're coming at something, if you're just women want a guy who kind of just gets it. Women always want a guy who kind of psychically already knows what she's into, and which is obviously incredibly hard to do. So, but you start to recognize patterns over time, and you start to recognize like, oh, okay, this girl's probably into like having her hair pulled. This girl seems to be into spanking. This girl seems to be into like this or that, a little bit more rough, a little bit more of this, a little bit more of that. And so, okay, well, how do we open her up to it? Well, you don't want to go from like 0 to 100 like straight off the bat. I don't personally think. I think it's far better to sort of start to, especially if it's a new partner, especially if you're not entirely sure and you as a man are not entirely super experienced with it. You want to kind of baby step your way into say more extreme things. And let's take for example like using butt plugs or whatever, right? Or like let's take for example anal sex. If you wanted to have anal sex with a woman, right? Let's try to break that thing down into like smaller bite-sized things that aren't as extreme as that. So what might that be? Well, it might start off at the lower end of that scale as like in doggy style, like just playing with the outside of her anus with your thumb, not sticking anything in her butt, but just playing with the anus. Like so, you're kind of you're linking the positive sensations she's getting from like penetrative sex to the sensation of having her anus played with, right? Okay, and then we move up from that to maybe you start to like slip the thumb in there every now and then, right? And this is in a different sex session as well, not in the same sex session. It's in a different one. And then the next time, maybe you start to introduce butt plugs. Maybe you either bring one, or you tell her to buy one, or you bring up the idea before you get to the bedroom of like getting a butt plug, and then you start with that. Okay, and then you start to train her butt, and then you start to experiment with anal sex. But you've basically baby stepped your way there, right? It's not just gone. You haven't gone from 0 to 100 instantly. You've done it in a way that allows her, very importantly, allows her to kind of to stop wherever she's comfortable. So you don't push a boundary, you don't force anything on a woman, obviously. But it also allows her to, maybe she'd never even considered this. Maybe she'd never even had the opportunity to experience this in a positive, pleasurable way. And so now you're giving her that opportunity. That's also a mental kind of model that you want to use to approach these things. You're giving her the opportunity to explore these things in a fun, safe way. So you can open up her sexuality and open up all kinds of new experiences for her. So that's just one example, given anal sex, but this applies to basically anything you want to do. All kinds of BDSM stuff. Maybe maybe you like to, you're a bit of an exhibitionist. You like to do things like risque in outdoor locations or whatever.